boy! Yes!
Hey, Zach here with the Mats Impact Dog Training. In today's video, I'm going to be doing an overview of marker words in dog training. Before we get too deep into this video, we first need to understand what exactly marker words are in training. In its simplest form, marker words are communication that we are able to use with our dogs in order to give them information and influence their current behavior or any future behaviors that they do. Marker words are different from obedience commands because marker words do not tell the dog what actions or behaviors to perform. Instead, marker words are simply providing feedback on that behavior. For example, an obedience command of sit tells the dog to do that behavior, whereas a marker word simply provides information to the dog on whether or not they've done the correct behavior or need to correct themselves into the appropriate behavior. Marker words are an essential element to any good training system, and the foundation of good obedience begins with a solid and clear marker system. Before I give a breakdown of all the different marker words that I use in my training system, we need to have a general overview of the different types and groups of marker words that are available. The two types of marker words are terminal markers and bridge markers. A terminal marker or signal lets the dog know that the obedience or behavior that they are performing is now done. The dog is allowed to get out of that obedience command. A bridge marker, on the other hand, is a signal or marker that lets the dog know to continue the behavior that they are doing. I like to think of a terminal marker and a bridge marker as lights at a traffic stop. As long as that light is red, you are going to stay stopped and not continue forward. This is very similar to how a bridge marker works. You are to continue doing the behavior that you are currently doing, whereas the green light is similar to the terminal marker. This lets you know that you are done with the obedience command, and then you can move forward and continue on with your day. Next up, we have the two groups of markers. These two are conditional and unconditional. A conditional marker is a marker word that lets the dog know that they're either going to receive a positive consequence or a negative consequence. The consequence that follows this type of marker word is conditional, based on the response, behaviors, and actions of the dog. Next up, we have unconditional markers. For example, if I give the marker word for my dog to bite onto a toy item, it is unconditional that I will allow the dog to bite that toy item. When using unconditional markers, we are making a promise to our dogs. If these marker words are not unconditional, the dog can see us as going back on our word and breaking a promise to them. Now, with these two types of marker words and the two groups of marker words, we can have multiple combinations and variations of marker words. For example, you can have a conditional bridge marker or an unconditional bridge marker. Likewise, you can have a conditional terminal marker and an unconditional terminal marker. The cool thing about marker words is once you understand the basic foundation of marker words themselves, you can get very creative with how you use the marker words in your training system. Now let me go over the different types of marker words that I use in my training system. The first type of marker word that I use in my training system is a reward marker. In my training system, the reward marker is a terminal marker, meaning that the dog is able to get out of the obedience position and then is allowed to collect a reward. This reward could be a toy that the dog is allowed to bite in my hand, or treats that are in my hand that the dog is allowed to chase. These markers should be unconditional. For these reward markers, I will oftentimes use yes as the word when I am allowing my dog to bite the toy item, and chip as the word that I use when I allow the dog to chase treats out of my hand. The next marker word that I use in my training system is the release marker. It allows the dog to get out of the obedience position. Unlike a reward marker though, my release marker is not associated with the dog getting a reward. This means the dog is allowed to get out of the obedience position, but is not always allowed to collect a reward. This is useful in a variety of settings. For example, I may not always have a reward to give to my dog. Or maybe the reward is the dog's freedom to go explore and sniff the grass or interact with a person in the environment. The word that I use for this release marker is break. The next marker word on the list is the continuation marker. This marker is a bridge marker and is also conditional. This marker word lets the dog know that they are doing a good job, and I want them to continue doing that job. This is especially useful when teaching a dog to hold an obedience position for an extended period of time. Oftentimes, I will accompany this marker word with me approaching the dog and giving them calm praise and pets, or perhaps bring them a treat to their mouth. This is a conditional marker because if the dog stays in the obedience position, I will come to the dog and give them a reward via affection or treats. The word that I use for my continuation marker is good. Next up, we have non-reward markers. Non-reward markers lets the dog know that they've made a mistake in the training, and unless they fix themselves and go back to the correct behavior, they will not be able to collect a reward. These non-reward markers are terminal and conditional. The reason why they are terminal is that they reset the obedience command, and the dog has to re-perform the command that they were told to do previously. These markers are conditional, because if the dog does not go back to the correct behavior, we can then utilize the leash and collar to put them back onto that position. Meanwhile, if the dog does respond and go back to the correct behavior, they have the possibility of getting the reward. So the consequences of this marker word is highly conditional on the dog's response. For the non-reward marker, I typically use the word nope in my training. Lastly, we have the punishment marker. This punishment marker is used when the dog has done something that we do not want to see them again. Usually, I reserve this punishment marker for doing anything that is dangerous or harmful to the dog or someone else. This marker word is neither a terminal or bridge marker because it is not associated with an obedience command. This marker is also an unconditional marker, meaning that even if the dog changes their behavior at the last possible second, the consequence still needs to be applied. Just like if we promise using a reward marker, the dog understands that we will always follow through with what we say. The word I use for the punishment marker is either no in a very stern and strong voice, or alternatively, bad. For many dogs, this last marker word is entirely unnecessary and is only reserved for very problematic behaviors or behaviors that need to be stopped in a very short amount of time. As stated in the beginning, marker words are extremely crucial to any successful training program. I would argue that a solid marker word system is more important than teaching your dog any obedience commands. If I were given the choice between a dog who knows all the obedience commands or a dog who knows and responds to just marker words, I would choose the dog that knows and responds to the marker words. Because at the end of the day, the marker words are the language and the communication that you use in order to teach your dog the desirable behaviors that you want them to do in life. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video and you start incorporating markers into your training system with your dog. Until next time, keep on training.